Good afternoon. I would now like to call to order our meeting today for the Allegheny County Board of Education, Tuesday, August 9th, 2022 at 5:05 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time, Mr. Gilmore will read closed session summaries for executive sessions held on June 7th, 2022.
Good afternoon. On June 7th, 2022, the board met in a closed session at 3:30 p.m. at the central office. The purpose of the closed session was to consult with legal counsel, to consider matters related to collective bargaining, to discuss personnel matters, and to engage in administrative function. All 5 board members were present and voted in favor of going into executive session with no opposed and no abstaining. The purpose were consistent with the general provisions article of the Maryland Annotated Code, section 3-305, subpart B, 1, 7, and 9.
Thank you, Mr. Gilmore. And at this time, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Farrell, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Frank. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And first, under our superintendent's report today, we have Mr. King from the Career Center to be, is going to recognize skills winners for Skills USA. Sorry.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting us this evening. I'm Richard King, principal at the Career Center. With me, I have Gary Taylor, carpentry instructor. Also, we invited Mr. Riggleman, Mike Riggleman, the electrician, electrical construction instructor, but he was unable to make it this evening. Each year at the Career Center, we have competitions within our school. Students move on to the regional level, to the state level, and if they're lucky enough to win at the state level, then they are able to move to the national level competition. This year we were very fortunate to have 5 students reach that level, and they did very well. Mr. Taylor did accompany them to the national competition, so I'm going to let him just speak on it for a minute.
Hello. Get a little bit of history about what teams, what Skills is. It's the largest student organization in career and technology, so it's a pretty good opportunities for these students. Like Mr. King was saying, we do competitions all the way up to get to the national level, and overall this year we was able to take 5 students. We took one in industrial motors control, and that was David Elfritz. He went to there, and then I took 4 on a Teamworks team. And what Teamworks team is, they have 1 carpenter, 1 mason, 1 electrician, and 1 plumber. Okay, and they have to, their competition, we last for about 4 days out there with ours. They have to build a small miniature house is what they have to do. It has to be wired, plumbed, framed, and everything else that goes along with it. So it's a pretty hefty competition, for any of them to be out there to do that, because we was at the Olympic Stadium this year, and that was a big opportunity just for the kids to be down in Atlanta, Georgia for that. David Alfritz, he took 15th in industrial motor control, and Teamworks team took 18th. Okay, I feel that that's pretty good with our students this year. The reason being, due to the COVID, they really only had like 1 year of training. We're out there competing against 3- and 4-year schools on technology, so to get in the top of the field like that, there's all 50 states plus Puerto Rico and Guam is eligible to go to the national competition. So what we took a 15th and 18th, I feel pretty good with the students. They like to come here tonight, but a lot of them are working in the trade. 3 of them do have an apprenticeship, so they're carrying on their education they learned out at school. And another boy's working for his dad, and then the other boy, he's got to go to work. He's getting an interview too. So, but they are carrying it on, into their stuff. But like I said, I like to thank the board for helping us to go with that, to go to the competitions with the students. I know it's a memory that them guys will never forget. So if anybody has any questions, I mean, I can feel free to fill you in a little bit about skills if anybody needs to know anything like that. Or
Mr. Taylor, I just want to thank you for not just teaching, but showing these students the way to be successful, obviously to place and make it to nationals. That speaks volumes of our programs and our staff out there, so congratulations.
thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor? If we could, why don't we give a round of applause for those students and their achievements? Thank you both for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, at this time, we're going to move into our instructional report, and starting, we have Dr. Callball and Mrs. Matheny with our reopening plan and inclement weather plan.
To speak with you about the reopening plan for Allegheny County Public Schools. And we've received guidance that has come to us from the Maryland Department of Health and MSDE. It was received on July 22nd, and it's guidance for the operations of pre-K to 12 schools, and we've based our plan on this information. So there's certain strategies that they've recommended for the everyday operation of schools. First of all, I want to point out that different from last year, vaccinations are now available for children ages 6 months and up. And so all of our students are now eligible for vaccine if parents choose to do so. So the first thing that we're going to address through our everyday operations is the idea of staying home when sick. That's the first strategy. And so we will recommend that staff and students who have symptoms of any infectious illness should not attend work or school. That staff and family should still notify a school when a student tests positive or a staff member tests positive for COVID-19. We are required and will continue to report all positive cases to MSDE. We have been doing a weekly press release when school is in session of positive cases and outbreaks, and can continue to do so if that is what the board would like us to do. If a student becomes ill during the school day, the student will report to the health room, and at that time they will be asked to wear a mask. They will be separated from well persons, and parents will be asked to pick their student up in a timely manner. And that was in place last year as well. It's recommended that persons with symptoms of COVID-19 be tested, and if the test is negative, they may return when their symptoms have improved and they are fever-free for 24 hours. And so there's a little change in how we're handling people who are positive for COVID-19. Anyone who is positive will be required to stay home 5 full days from the date of symptom onset if they are symptomatic. If they are asymptomatic, have no symptoms, they'll stay home 5 full days from the date of their positive test. Day 0 is considered the day that the symptoms began or the day that they were tested. After the 5th day, if the person's symptoms have improved and they are fever-free for 24 hours without medication, they may return to school. At that time, they'll be required to wear a well-fitting mask days 6 through 10. Masks will not need to be worn while they're eating, drinking, or outside, just while they're indoors and not engaged in those activities. In addition, we will, another strategy is ventilation. We'll continue to use the air purifiers that we used last year in all classroom settings. Hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette is also a strategy, and we'll continue to reinforce that with students. And also cleaning, and we'll continue to do high-touch surface cleaning daily that's done in the evening after school. So those are the everyday strategies that we're recommending for COVID-19, and you'll see that things like the distancing that we had last year are not something that's currently being recommended, so students will be using lockers. They will be in the cafeteria as they were previously to eat, so all of that will go back to a pre-COVID situation. We do have some COVID-19 prevention strategies that we're also recommending as part of our plan. Contact tracing and quarantining of close contacts. Universal contact tracing is no longer recommended in school, and so we will not be contact tracing for individual cases. Staff and students who are known close contacts, regardless of their vaccination status, they may continue to attend school, but we are asking that they mask for 10 days after their last exposure to the positive person. This as long as they are asymptomatic, not exhibiting any symptoms. It is recommended that individuals who know they are a close contact test 3 to 5 days after exposure. As far as masking, staff and students may choose to wear a mask based on their personal preference or informed by their personal level of risk to themselves, their household, or their social contacts. ACPS will support the voluntary masking for any reason. So any student or family staff member who chooses to mask, we support that. It isn't required at this point. It will just be based on choice. COVID-19 testing, we will provide take-home test kits to every student and staff member who are exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19. And unlike last year, a negative home test will be accepted as proof of a negative test. Parents were asking that they would write their child's name and the date the test was administered and provide a picture to the school to verify that it's a negative test. And then a student may return if they have improved symptoms at that time. Parents are encouraged to report positive tests to the Maryland Department of Health. There's a website link where they will do that, and we are providing that to parents to do so. And finally, outbreaks. The outbreak definition is the same as last year. It's 3 EpiLink cases in a classroom, would be a classroom or cohort outbreak. 3 classroom or cohort outbreaks in a school would be a school-wide outbreak. If there is a cohort or classroom outbreak, then we will do contact tracing in that case. It'll be performed for the classes linked to the outbreak. We'll focus on students who had symptoms or staff members who had symptoms who tested positive in the previous 5 days, and we'll look at close contacts who were exposed in the last 5 days. Parents will be notified of any cohort or classroom outbreak in their building. It is possible that during an outbreak, additional control measures may be necessary on a temporary basis depending on the severity of the outbreak. So it is possible that we could recommend masking, testing, increased hand washing, or even rescheduling or canceling of some events if there would be an outbreak that necessitated that. And finally, this is the MSDE MDH guidance for COVID-19 symptoms, isolation, and quarantine that we will be using in all of our schools. This is what health nurses will use. So if a staff member or student has COVID-19 symptoms, they will not attend work or school. We will recommend that they be tested for COVID-19. If the test is negative, they may return when symptoms improve as long as they are fever-free for 24 hours without medication. And again, we will be providing students sent home ill from school with take-home COVID tests for families to use. If they're positive, regardless of symptoms, they have to stay home 5 days from the start of symptoms or from the date of the positive test. After day 5, they may return if symptoms have improved and no fever for 24 hours without medication, and they must mask for an additional 5 days, except when eating, drinking, or outside. And finally, close contact with someone with known or suspected COVID-19 but no symptoms. The staff or student can continue to attend school or work regardless of their vaccine status. They should mask for 10 days from the date of last exposure, and we will recommend, not require, but recommend they test at 3 to 5 days after exposure. So this is the plan that the reopening plan that we would like to put forth as far as COVID-19. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Debbie, with the term outbreak, the health department, along with MSDE, a lot of the people involved are saying that they're not real crazy about the term outbreak. So I just wanted to get a definition. If everyone in this room was in a class, and I ended up positive, and it was because someone at my house, or someone at my church, or someone at whatever activity I'm doing, and 3 other people, the same thing. That's not 3 of us does not make it an outbreak in our classroom. It's an outbreak in our classroom if I gave it to 2 other people within the classroom. Am I understanding that
It's 3
correct?
EpiLinked cases, so
So that's what that means, in other words, so that the public knows, yeah, I might have it, and I don't want to jinx anybody. 3 other people may have it, But, and they're saying, well, you said you were going to let us know if there's an outbreak. It's not an outbreak unless we are giving it to each other within that classroom, whether it's employee or students,
And
correct?
That's correct. And the Maryland Department of Health is the one who certifies those outbreaks. It's not us.
Yeah.
So they'll let us know if it meets the definition of an outbreak, and if it does, then that's when we would send the call and notify parents. We would notify the parents in that classroom that there's an outbreak in the classroom, and then we would notify the entire school that there's an outbreak in the school.
Yeah, and my last point is, it doesn't matter how large a class is. I could be in a
That's
gym class
correct.
with 50 students, or I could be in a class with 6 students. If there are 3, then they call that an outbreak.
That's correct. They are
Okay.
linked. That's
Thank you.
right.
There any-
And that definition may change, but at this point, that is the definition that we have.
Any other questions for Mrs. Matheny? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So as part of our reopening plan, we also are going to be putting forth the inclement weather plan for the year. The MSDE is allowing districts to use up to 8 days for virtual learning, and the ACPS is planning on using those virtual days for inclement weather. So for the first 3 inclement weather days that we may need to use this year, we will use asynchronous learning. And students will be able to log on to the Schoology platform to complete their assignments at any time during that inclement weather day. So if students or parents want to do something in the morning hours, they can obviously get onto the Schoology platform in the afternoon hours or even the evening hours to complete those assignments. For those asynchronous assignments, we will always regard the developmental level of the child in determining how many assignments will be given per class on that day. If the school system should need more days because of inclement weather, we have up to 5 additional days that can be used, and we will use those through synchronous learning through the Schoology platform. And of course, if you remember, synchronous means real time with the teacher. And again, we'll use the platform, and a schedule will be posted on the website and provided for the schools to use for those synchronous days. Students without connectivity will have up to 2 days following the inclement weather day to submit their assignments for each class, and if they do so, then they will be marked present for that class. So that is what our inclement weather plan will be for the 22-23 school year. We feel using these virtual days for that will be very beneficial to our students and to our staff, and hopefully we won't go past that and will not need to make up any days at the end of the school year. That's our hope anyway. Any questions?
Couple comments. Last year, we were going to use the first 3 days as snow days. So just to be clear, we're not planning on using snow days. For example, last year on September 1st, we had the rains that were so heavy, that was an inclement weather day. We obviously would not be prepared to say, hey, we're going to use this plan for such a day like that. These will be prepared so that when there's bad weather, and no one would have expected September 1st. So, and the other thought from senior staff and talking to employees and collaborating with the other groups, the asynchronous day that you have already stated, they can go out, they can have that break. Teachers will be available, we'll have a schedule for them in the morning, and then they won't be available in the afternoon in case they have a question during asynchronous day. So the asynchronous day is completely different from the synchronous day. So that's why our thought is of not having snow days, because they're going to be able to do what they can do that work whenever they want to do it on that day. So I just wanted to.
Mrs. Fraley?
So the 5 built-in snow days that we've always had before are the 5 built-in inclement weather days. Do we still have those too in our calendar?
The MSDE does require 5 built-in snow days, so we will keep those on the calendar. And if we exceed the 8 days, which we have in past years, then we will have those built-in days to consider if we're not that far along in our calendar, obviously.
So in theory, though, if we don't use up to 8, then those 5 built-in days, we wouldn't need to use them, right? Because basically
That's
we
correct.
have 8 plus 5, 12, 13.
Yes, 13. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Caldwell regarding the inclement weather plan?
You can either do it now or do it under new business.
Yeah, we have it listed under new business, but if, it doesn't make a difference to me. You can if you wish.
Well, then I make a motion, we accept these as the back-to-school plan for 22-23 year.
Okay, is there a second to Mrs. Fraley? Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And then, Dr. Caldwell, you also have Class of 2022 report and summer school update, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So I do want to give you the Class of 2022 report. We had students in the Class of 2022 accepted to more than 37 different colleges and universities. Of those, 228 of our students have chosen to continue their post-secondary education locally through Allegheny College of Maryland and through Frostburg State University. And then we had 223 students at the time of this report that were offered over a total of $6 million in different types of scholarships. So the class really did a nice job with that. The next slide shows our projected AP enrollment. Of course, as we get closer to the date of the school year, these numbers may be changed a little bit as students change their schedules, but the numbers are very decent. You will see that in most cases, the numbers increased for students who are taking AP courses. And I do want to call your attention to AP Government and Politics. The number says 0 there, and that's simply because we did a course sequence change with the government. The AP Government will now be offered in grade 10, so we will have a enrollment status for that next school year for that. The next slide shows the projected dual enrollment, and we have continued to increase in numbers with our dual enrollment opportunities for our students. We work very collaboratively with Allegheny College of Maryland for our dual enrollment classes. Many of our teachers are considered adjuncts for Allegheny College of Maryland, and you can see the numbers for those courses, and you can see the trend data across 5 years there. Most of the numbers continue to be stable or to increase there in those offerings as well. I'd like to just give you just a very brief overview of the summer programs. Last year, we had a number of summer programs this year. We had 679 students in pre-K through grade 5 participate in the Early Childhood Elementary Summer Learning Program. Again, the focus was on reading and math skills necessary for students to be successful in their next school year. It was all about decreasing any gaps in learning that would negatively impact the student's success. And then our students also participated in enrichment type of experiences such as STEM, robotics, and of course movement through physical education. The Judy Centers were also involved with our incoming 3-year-old students and our 4-year-old students, and these were maintained summer camps at the schools where the sites were located, South Penn and Georges Creek. South Penn also hosted the services for students with IEPs that needed the extended school year program. And then at the elementary level, our students in the CHIP program also had the opportunity to attend some summer sessions and extend their language skills. At the middle school level, our numbers had decreased substantially. I would think that this is due to students being in school last year and having that social support, but we had 50 middle school students attend the program. Again, it focused primarily on mathematics and ELA, and then there was always an enrichment activity. We use the MobyMax individualized learning platform, which gives us both pre and post-test information, as well as used Geometricity, which was a mathematics activity that was very hands-on and reinforced geometry skills for the students. We also, in ELA, focused on a novel called Red Kayak, and this particular novel has some connections to Western Maryland. Enrichment activities varied by school, but there were things like bridge building, model rocketry, cooking, social emotional learning lessons, and of course, again, movement through physical education. If you look at the pre to post-test growth, and some of our supervisors are still analyzing that data, for a 4-week program, this is decent growth for the students who attended on a regular basis. So of course, across 4 weeks, the students grew from pre to post-test analysis 1.5 months in mathematics, and the average growth in ELA was 3 months. So for a 4-week program, those are decent results. There was also a special education compensatory and recovery program, and this was a very hands-on type of program for our students. It was included many thematic units, including sports, animals, agriculture, and space. It was a 6-week program held at the Restart, and emphasis was on hands-on science and math concepts. And there was pre and post assessments as well that focused on growth in mathematics, especially areas of challenge for students, fractions, and other identified goals on the students' IEPs. And then also students participated in robotics activities over the camp. Both Mr. Blank and myself, we had opportunities to get there to the Restart, and we can tell you it was very engaging for the students. Every time we had the opportunity to go there, the students were out doing things, involved on hands-on activities, and the staff members were also participating with the students on that. I had a chance to go up during the water unit, and the students were doing all types of activities there. So it's a very well done program with the students with disabilities. We also had a high school one. It was called the Taste of ACM, and this was with our rising juniors and seniors with disabilities. And this was at the ACM campus. And there was a number of different tasks involved through exploratory activities. Students got involved in areas like auto technology, multimedia, criminal justice, health, culinary, arts, and hospitality. And they spent one day at the Western Maryland's Makerspace, exploring the areas of welding and automotive, carpentry, and multimedia as well. And then I just want to give a kudos that ACM gifted each student a $500 scholarship for participating in the week-long campus. So that was really a nice incentive for those students. I just want to, before I close out the presentation on our high school original credit and credit recovery, just give a shout out to many organizations and individuals that partnered with us on these camps. I'm obviously, if I say them, I'm going to fail to mention someone, but we had a lot of community partners. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our supervisors, for one thing, who coordinated all these programs, built these programs out along with their other duties and responsibilities, the principals and the APs who facilitated and supervised the programs, and for our teachers, and instructional assistants who work the programs. So we appreciate that. We will be having another summer program during the 23-24 school year as well next year as well. And so we'll be building that out. And then lastly, the high school original credit and credit recovery. For the last 2 years, we have had really high enrollment, which is predictable with the students needing to recover some credits that they lost. Trina Simpson is the coordinator of that program, and we had 217 credits obtained in summer school for the high school program. 51 original credits in PE, health, financial literacy, and in fine arts, and then 166 credits overall that students recovered from failed subjects. So that was incredible for those students, putting many of those students back on track for graduation as they should be. So overall, I think we were highly pleased with our summer programs. We have a report, of course, that's due to the MSDE in January about our summer programs. Any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Caldwell, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to unfinished business. We have 2 policies for second reading, and I will turn it over to Mr. Gilmore.
Thank you, Madam President. The first is it'll be a second reading on policy EA. The policy committee added the definition to clarify non-instructional support services. Again, this will be the second reading, and it will become policy if it is approved by the board.
Motion to approve second reading of policy EA, non-instructional support services.
Motion by Mrs. Fraley. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Frank. Any questions or concerns regarding the policy? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the second is to policy DIE. It struck language requiring an annual report, as the BOE no longer does an annual report in this instance. So it struck that definition, or that obligation. This will be the second reading, and if approved, it will become policy.
Is there a motion regarding policy DIE?
Motion to accept.
Motion by Mr. Farrell, second by Ms. Frank. Any questions or concerns? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will move into hearing of constituents. I would like to remind those speaking that we do ask that your comments are limited to 5 minutes, and comments comments excluded from this evening are individual personnel issues, identifying individual students or staff members, matters that are on appeal or may be appealed, topics for which the board schedules formal public hearings, or advertising or solicitation of products and or services. And I believe we have first Ms. Chelsea Bohr.
Good evening. I know that most of you know me as a teacher, but I am not here as a teacher this evening. I'm here as a former student and a parent. When I graduated from Fort Hill in 2010, I was fortunate enough to be a part of what's called the FFA program. And I know that you have heard that around a little bit lately, and I just wanted to come and speak on it while it was being discussed. When I was in the Fort Hill program all 4 years at Fort Hill, I had the ability to travel to places that I wouldn't have gone to otherwise. I actually was able to travel downstate Maryland several times for the state convention, as well as competitions. We held them here and all over Maryland. I also actually made it to the regional competition level that we went to Ohio, and I also made it to the national competition level where we got to attend in Indianapolis, Indiana. Now, while I was in the FFA program, I wasn't just going to FFA competitions. We actually had a lot of training. We had a lot of meetings that we attended, and I was on a lot of programs. I really enjoyed the FFA program, and that's why I was involved in so much. I was involved in the forestry program, where we got to go to the regional competition that was 5 states competing in Ohio, and we placed third my senior year. And that was not just each of the 5 states. That was different regions from within those 5 states that went to that. So there were many, many teams that competed, and we did extremely well, thanks to our advisor, thanks to the trainers that he brought in, and the time that we put in. I, as an individual, was able to go and compete at the national public speaking competition, which is why I'm able to stand in front of you and speak as I do. I think that training, that experience also gave me the ability to stand in front of 30 6th to 8th graders and not be concerned about how to talk. The career readiness that I got out of that program is unmatched by anything else that I did as a child. The skills that I use nowadays are things you wouldn't necessarily think of. We own an acre property, and I wouldn't be able to look at the gentleman who's coming into our property and say, yes, I have a red pine that's died in the back and it needs to be cut down. So he's not asking me, oh, which tree is it? I already know, because I was trained in that while I was in that program. If I hadn't been in that training, I wouldn't know anything about taking care of that property. I wouldn't be able to engage my son in things that he's interested in now, which are chickens and goats. So I am glad to be able to pass that on. I also took out of that program business skills that I'm able to use. I started with 2 goats when I was 13 years old, and by the time that I graduated from Fort Hill and the FFA program, I had a herd of 70. And that gave me many skills other than just taking care of them and just the everyday life of living on a 10-acre farm. I was able to run a business. I timed out the schedule of breeding the goats, marketing them to other 4-H and FFA members to sell at the fair and to show. I learned to negotiate the price of a new buck or a doe that I was going to add to my herd. There's so many more things I could go on about, but those are just a couple. And if you're considering applying for a charter for the high schools, I am all for it and totally behind it because I want my child to be able to come up through the schools and have access to that program. And I think that you would be amazed at the amount of children that are in our districts right now that would love that program. I see the need for it as a teacher. I see how much we have kids that would latch on to that so quickly and would really, really benefit from it. So it's not just going to be the kids who are on a farm right now. Me with my acre, I still use those skills. So I just hope that in conversations going forward that you guys will all be proponents of it and really push for that program to be in all the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bohr. And I believe we also have a Dana Tenen signed up to speak.
Good evening, Mr. Superintendent Blank, other members of the Board of Education. Thank you for having me. I first want to start off by making a comment on what we heard earlier about the COVID-19 procedures and policies. After returning to school, you must wear a mask for 6 days in the class. However, you can eat and drink without the mask, which means you're still sitting next to your classmate and your friends while you're eating and drinking. Doesn't make much sense to me. But my main concern is this. Have we looked at protecting Allegheny County schools from lawsuits? Because if I'm a parent and my kid has to wear a mask and all the other kids are not, isn't that a violation of HIPAA? Because you're directly letting the other classmates know that this kid has COVID or had COVID. So did we look at that to see how we can protect our school systems from parents filing complaints because a kid can be teased because he has it? A kid can be, he's going to be singled out. So have we looked at any other ways of how to bring a kid back to school without him or her being singled out? And are we protecting ACPS from lawsuits with the HIPAA violation? Originally, I wanted to come up here and speak on the opportunities that our youth have here in Cumberland. The opportunities are not great. Cumberland's budget, I believe, is 2.3% of a $34 million budget that's allocated to recreation and to youth. It's not acceptable. I am pleading with the Board of Education to find ways to engage our youth more, or to have programs that are accessible to the youth of Cumberland. Cumberland needs it. We need more resources. And I'll leave you all with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tenen. Are there any board member responses to the constituents? Thank you. Okay, first under new business, we have Mr. Todd Lutton with an update for CEP.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm here to speak on the CEP program. It's the Community Eligibility Provision. Currently we have 4 schools in Allegheny County that is under the program. This entitles the students in those 4 schools to have free breakfast and free lunch. So currently we have Georges Creek, John Humbert, South Penn, and Westernport available for the program. It is a 4-year program that we have to renew this year. When we redid the numbers this year, Cache Valley was in the mix of that. I am recommending that Cache Valley be instilled with those 4 schools that we currently have, and then that would be a program for the next 4 years in place. The program is based on, it's free and reduced of direct certifications for students. So if you have at least 40% of your students in the program, your school would be eligible for that. You could do it as single schools, you could do it as groups, or you could do it as entire district. So 4 years ago when we went through this, we chose to do those 4 schools because the numbers came up to a certain percentage where all of those meals would be reimbursed at the free rate. So currently with those 5 schools that we have in place, it comes out to like 98.5% that those meals would be reimbursed at that free rate. The rest of them would be reimbursed at the paid rate. So that would be my recommendation for the evening.
there any questions for Mr. Lutton? Is there a motion regarding his proposal?
I make a motion that we accept the proposal to increase the CEP schools to 5.
Motion by Mrs. Fraley, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Farrell. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Lutton.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Lutton, before you leave, I just wanted to thank you for all the work you and your team have done over the last few years with COVID and providing meals, and that was a very complicated challenge for the system. So that's first.
Okay.
Second, I know that the portion that has to be paid by the student or the student's parents
Yes.
has remained unchanged for at least the last 3 years, if not 4.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
And so I commend you for that. I mean, we all go grocery shopping. We know what we're hit with when we go.
Right.
And to be able to keep that 265 at,
Yes,
at the
that's correct.
elementary and 285
285
at
for
the
secondary, yes.
secondary level is remarkable. And that comes from good planning and a good team. So
Okay,
thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, thank you.
Okay, at this time, is there a motion to meet in executive session September 13th, 2022 as necessary? Motion by Ms. Frank, second by Dr. Bond. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. We have a new student member of the board for this school year, Ms. Carly Kleiss, but she was not able to be with us this evening, so we look forward to having her at our September meeting. And are there any other board member updates? Ms. Frank?
Because we're semi-retired, Mr. Farrell and I were able to attend the new teacher orientation last week. It seemed like a big crowd to me, but when I asked Mr. Blank, I think 67 was the number you had, thinking that it was a record year, he said it's not. So I was quite surprised. But I just kind of want to reiterate for a second what I said to the new folks, and that is teaching's a calling, and people that are able to answer that, we need to appreciate those folks. For the new teachers, the seasoned veterans, it breaks my heart, the grief and attacks these folks are getting constantly in social media. So I just would say to all teachers and all support staff in the school system, don't let others steal your voice, and don't let them steal your confidence. You are the experts. And I've never been more proud of this system than I have been being a board member, obviously, but I had children go through the system. I accepted students from this system at Allegheny College for decades. The quality of education in Allegheny County holds a candle to nobody else. I mean, we do a really great job. We can always improve. That's the role of this board and the superintendent. But I've gotten increasingly frustrated at all the negativity, mostly from a very small minority of vocal people. And I just would say to every teacher, new or old or seasoned, I hated being called an old teacher myself, do what you do. You're the expert. And we're leaving that up to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Frank. Anyone else? Ms. Fraley?
I just wanted to inform the board that I was appointed by the governor to a consortium for coordinated community supports. I'm representing MABE in that appointment, but I also will have the ability to represent Western Maryland as far as the differences in the types of supports that are needed for rural communities versus downstate, so to speak. And that was part of my application as to being appointed. That was part of the reason they stated anyway that I was selected. So hopefully the first meeting of that's at mid-August, and then they're meeting and they have requirements. It was established by part of the law that was put into place to have this. The Maryland General Assembly established it to expand access to behavioral health services for students across all levels, holistically, non-stigmatized. So hopefully that'll be helpful for Allegheny County as well as just the whole state. At the same time, there's the MABE conference that's coming up in October and I'm not sure how many of us are attending, but it is now on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, which actually turns out to help some, for those that have jobs, that you can go on a Saturday. And one of the events that they're doing on Saturday is a student member of the board panel. And I requested that our student member of the board, and as well as Garrett County's, if they could attend, to be a representative on there as well, again, to give a student perspective of somebody that's a little bit different than those that are in the bigger counties. And our student member of the board said she could attend, so hopefully that'll end up working out, and that'd be on Saturday morning, so that'll be able for them to not even have to miss school to do that. But the conference itself, the main focus of the conference, two main focuses. One is the blueprint, of course, but also the second one is safety in our schools. So that is something that, we're all a part of and have all been actively working on, but that's a distinct presentation that's going to be done as a hot topic at this conference. So the Maryland Center for School Safety will have people there, as well as the National Association of School Resource Officers will have people there. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fraley.
Crystal?
Mr. Farrell?
I'd like to thank the young teacher for coming and talking about the FFA program. I'm very involved in the ag program. Have my own farm, and I'm on the board of directors for the Farm Bureau. And was so good to go to the fair this year and see the kids come and show their animals and sell their animals and go through all that. And you explained it better than I could. And I really appreciate you doing that, because there is a lot of, pride in wearing those jackets and going to national competitions. But thank you for coming and explaining it, like I say, better than I could.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. Dr. Bond, anything? All right. Okay, at this time, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Dr. Bond, second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Fraley. All those in favor? Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.